don't you feel better? You just get rid of all that yuck. This is a great way to start your class, particularly if they've just come back from PE. You're in your very first period or your first block. This is an elementary version, but for those of you, I'm a secondary person, although I would tell you what, my high school kids will be all over that. But I wanted to share with you, these are some of my favorites. And so I wanted to give you some other examples of just breathing in and breathing out. Sometimes we have a student that we can just tell is just, just completely overwhelmed with anxiety. Giving that student something like this to say, all right, let's come over here, just breathe in and breathe out can make all the difference, because they're going to want to let off steam one way or the other. I am so honored. You just heard Dr. Garner speak just a moment ago, and Joe, we all call him Joe, but Dr. Garner, we met a few years ago, actually, when I was doing I think it was a district presentation for Jefferson County on pretty much this same topic. I was doing something for, and I know we've got some Jefferson County teachers in the room, and we connected after I did this big training, and then I hired him. I think I interviewed him, and about 10 minutes into the interview, I said, you're coming with me. You're our kind of people. So you already know who I am, but if any of you should be new, I am Melissa Shields. I'm the Assistant State Superintendent. You just heard from my partner in crime, Ms. Shanthia Washington, who's the other state superintendent. And the backstory is she and I were in a meeting, and we're sitting next to each other, and we're like, you know what, we need to do something for our teachers who are not yet certified, but are standing in front of kids every day with a heart for children, doing some amazing things. And our state superintendent, Dr. Mackey, said, I can't remember exactly what he said, Ms. Washington, but it's like, yes, let's do that. And so we immediately got to work. But Joe, if you would, I would love for you to tell them a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Shields. And she built me up to be much better or stronger of a leader, teacher, educator than I feel that I am. But thank you, Dr. Shields. And everyone, my name's Joe, and I am a recovering emergency certification educator. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. And I want you all to know that, one of the things that I've tried to remember throughout my career in education is what it was like to be that first year teacher on an emergency certification without that educational background and training, and being left alone to survive. So as I was reflecting on the questions that you all submitted, it caused me to dig a little bit deeper into what I was thinking during that time. And I look forward to sharing some of those responses with you later on this evening. Yeah, Dr. Shields told me, and that's one of the things we're good at. We will steal good people. And I am one of the administrators in the Office of School Improvement. And I want you all to know that I am here to support you in any capacity. And thank you for inviting me this evening to spend some time with you all.
Thanks, Joe. I know we have some Bessemer teachers in the room. So when I found that picture of you and me standing in front of Bessemer Middle, I'm like, oh, I got to show that one. So I wanted to give some love to our Bessemer teachers in the room. And I think we're working with Miss Rosa Allen Cooper over with Lawrence County. So Dr. Garner and I have traveled the state just doing a lot of fun things for schools and for teachers. And when we found an opportunity to do this, which is something he and I are very passionate about in supporting our students. I had told Joe before, I was that teacher and my principals, and I know we're recording this, so I may have to edit this later, but this, anytime this kid would come in and he'd been in and out of trouble, and he had a probation officer, and he, whatever, they always put those students in my class, always. And I asked my principal once, I'm like, hey, what gives? He said, well, Miss Shields, you're just best with the worst kids. And I don't know if that's a compliment. But you know what? I'm here to tell you he's right. I know my maybe my heart just really lends itself to students who come to me mad and angry and I don't want to learn. And I really found those students to be challenges.
And
So
thank you
we
for
have a little
those-
after party. Usually we stay afterward to ask questions. And Dr. Garner has spent hours. I sent him every one of your questions from last week. And I just put them all in a document. And I said, you know, Joe, just answer the ones. What he has done is incredible. It's going to be such a gift for emergency certificate teachers across the state. But he went through every single one of your questions to give you a really thoughtful response. Joe, you did not have to do that. And I am just so grateful that you did. And he's going to answer some of those questions, you know, in person tonight. So he's going to stay on afterward to answer any questions that you had. Joe, did you have something to add to that?
Absolutely. And thank you, Dr. Shields. You know, one of the things that I wanted you to do throughout this evening when we talk about discipline, de-escalation, and self-wellness is think about your experience with education. And I know that your formal education, the advanced post-secondary education is somewhat limited with regards to being a teacher, being an educator, and the instructional strategies. And I want you all to know that, you know, those are things that you can learn, but what you cannot teach people how to do is have a heart for making a difference in the lives of others. And everything we do and discuss tonight is based upon having those relationships, those positive relationships with the young men and young ladies, because it's not just about teaching and learning with core content. It's about changing lives and preparing young men and young ladies to be successful when they transition from either elementary to middle to high and post-secondary. So what I always try to do is get people to think in terms of what they know to be true and accurate based upon their experiences. I'm a strong believer in the social learning theory that we learn based upon what we come into contact with. So just think about it. And in preparation for our content that we cover, what was your education like when you were in elementary, middle, and high school? Was it like the spaghetti Western, the good, the bad, and the ugly? And think about how that shaped who you are and the decisions you made, either positively or negatively, as we worked through tonight's content.
Joe, as you were talking, I was reminded of some of the common trends that were emerged in those questions. And I think the ones that made me chuckle the most is like, did you use any police tactics in your classroom? And he's going to respond to that. I thought, you know, it's a valid question. It is a valid question. But he's absolutely right. And that is beautiful to kind of go into our very first slide. So here's the gist. Everybody wants, like, what is the secret for, you know, students to behave the way I want them to, for things to transition nicely. And the number one thing that we're going to tell you tonight, it's all about relationships. If we don't know our students, we can't teach them, and they feel the same way. So you don't know my story, you don't know what's going on, and they immediately put these barriers up. So we're going to talk about how to develop some relational opportunities for our littles and for our big students. Basically, they want to be they want to be seen, they want to be heard. You know that has anyone ever watched the movie The Help or read the book The Help? Are you familiar with that book or the movie? Okay, so let's check your movie trivia here. So remember Abilene, and she was taking care of the woman's little girl, and the woman was so verbally abusive to that little girl. You remember that? And she was always like just talking down to her. Do you remember what Abilene said to the little girl? This was her norm. Every single chance she got, she told that little girl what? I'm watching your lips. Let's see. All right. Yes. I see Kayla. I'm going around. There you go. Yes, Wilhelmina. I see it. You is kind. You is smart. You is what? Important. Every child wants to hear that. I would argue every adult wants to hear that. And so our students want us to tell them in one way or another, you are kind, you are smart, you are important. And everything you do in my class, I used to tease my, I'm a, high school, middle school teacher. And the first day of school, I'd grab my, trash can and stand in front of the class. And I'd say, what is this? And they're like, we heard English teachers are crazy, but now we know. And they're like, it's a trash can. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. You don't throw anything away in this classroom unless it goes through me, because every single thing you do in this classroom, it is important. And it's going to help me be a better teacher to you. And we're going to use this to continue our kind of goal setting and our planning. And I truly did that every year. I'm like, you don't throw stuff away. We're going to keep it in notebooks. I'm going to pull you up to my, table, to my desk. We're going to talk about it. So here's the thing that is super important for you to know. So a lot of you, when you first did that, when you first registered, we asked you, what are the things that you feel like you need to know? And a lot of you said, I don't know my content like I want to. I don't know it because I didn't go to classes. I didn't take, particular teacher prep courses. Well, here's something I want you to see, and I think this is going to change your perspective just a little bit. So there's this guy, and if you are in classes right now, you probably heard of him. His name is John Hattie, and he is this educator that did hundreds and hundreds of meta-analysis of studies in teachers' classrooms and with students to see, what moves kids. And what he found, and I won't get, super weedy in this, but something that you can do in your classroom, you want to have at least 1 year's growth, right? If you're teaching third grade, by the end of third grade, you want those kids to be ready for fourth grade. Are we good? So John Hattie says, if you do something and you want 1 year's growth, you have to have at least kind of 0.4 on this, what he called zone of desired effects. Are you with me? I want you to look right here. Teacher estimates of achievement, believing that my students can achieve. Building those relationships, it goes off the chart. So if 0.4 is 1 year's growth, here's 2 years growth, here's 3 years growth. Me going into a classroom and building those positive relationships and knowing I got what it takes to move these kids, and I know these kids have what it takes to be moved, is off the chain in terms of creating student impact. But I want you to look at teacher content knowledge. Is 0.11. I mean, so it's like, have you ever heard that expression, kids don't care what you know until they know how much you care? So here's the research behind that. Someone didn't just say that. Now, no one is saying don't know your stuff, because we certainly want you to do that. But what we are saying is you can be the smartest teacher in the world. You can know your content. You can have it memorized backward and forward. But if you are not believing that your students can learn and building those relationships, you're not going to go anywhere. And so that's where we're really going to start today. This quote, and I think this is actually tagged on my own Twitter, is the one I've kind of got held up there. And without going into my own personal story, I will say I am in front of you today because of my first grade teacher and because of my second grade teacher, who did not know each other and were two completely different cities. And I'm here today because they thought I was smart. And so I was. And I use this mantra to remind myself, a lot of your students will come to you thinking, I'm bad. I've missed a lot of school. I don't have good grades. I'm just not smart. And it's our job to say, you are kind, you are smart, you are wonderful. I'm telling you that you are. So what we'd like to do is I'm going to throw a link in the chat. And as I'm doing that, we want to give you a little, wait time to think about what it is in your classrooms that you believe get students to either act out, have outbursts, or to have, anxiety. So I'm going to put this link in the chat. Let me find the chat. And you can either click on that, or I'll pull the screen back up. You'll see a screen that looks just like this. I'd like you just to either use your phone, the QR code, or use that link in the chat. And just, I'm going to give you 1 minute. This is called a fast chat, to write down those things that you think trigger anxiety and outburst in our classroom and outside our classroom. Give you 1 minute to do that. You got 30 more seconds. All right, let's see what we got. Oh, wow, look at that. Embarrassment, yes. Now, the words, that we use multiple times are going to be bigger. Confusion, yelling, someone yelling at them. I don't like that either. Pressure, peers, not understanding, lack of knowledge. Those definitely go together. Homework. We can have whole conversations about that. Overwhelmed. I saw someone in another sessions, they said, our kids have so many pressures on them. They're so involved in so many sports and events. Tests, insecurity, boredom, absolutely. That's actually a good one, yes. Failing grades. Oh, these are great. Low self-esteem. I see a lot of not understanding. I see, or meaning the same thing. Profane language, yes. Unconfident. Being called to the board, yes. A lot of kids will act up because, like, don't ask me to read. Absolutely. So looking at these, and if you should still be able to add, this link will stay up because we're going to use this image later. We want to talk about some of those things. So, the kids come into our classrooms and, whether you're teaching a classroom of 20 or you're teaching a classroom of 30, you got 30 different personalities. And there's a lot of ways to kind of check the temperature, if you will. So I have stolen this next slide from Dr. Garner so many times. So I'm going to have to defer to him because I have used it as an adult temperature checker to just determine, like, who's in the room, like who am I dealing with today. So Joe, you want to tell them a little about that one?
Absolutely. And those of you that are college football fans, you recognize this individual on your screen, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different pictures of Nick Saban, the GOAT. And what I want you to do is think about how your week began. Monday morning or even Sunday night, as you're thinking about Monday morning and that drive into work, which picture of Nick Saban best describes your mood or your emotional state at the time of driving into work on Monday morning? Please take some time, think about it, and put it in the chat.
I have to put the chat. I got to say this.
And while y'all are thinking about that, I watched the game Saturday. I watched as many games as I possibly could because college football is like Christmas time for me. I saw a lot of number 3 Saturday night.
Yes.
A lot of that.
Yes. I don't see a lot of 3s. Okay, I just said that. Now I see a 3. Yeah, 2 and 6s are very similar. I agree. I see some of that. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but all I see is video. I can't see slides or anything. Every time I go to a link like that, I don't know how to get back to the Zoom.
I don't know that I can help you with that without interrupting this flow, but I tell you what I can do is minimize it and see, or just log back in. Now, Joe, I got to ask them now. So what are you Friday night when you get home and you finally get to like exhale? What's your number then? Yeah, a lot of fours. Yeah,
A lot of fours, a
a
six.
lot of fours and fives.
And I'm not sure
Me
what the
too.
look of a six is. It's like, are you really going to ask me a question or ask me to engage in conversation when I get home on a Friday afternoon?
Yeah. Now, what's funny is, and we're still showing the same screen. So if anyone else is having trouble, we'll try to minimize, because I know you just opened up multiple screens, which means you need to minimize one. But let's just pretend you do this with your students tomorrow. And you ask your students when they like, hold up. And I think I saw Miss Little. I think I saw her put her hand up like she's a 2 or she's a 3. I mean, just to let you see, okay, if I got a 3 in my classroom, you know, maybe there's a rough night. Maybe, you know, his mom and dad got into a bad fight. Maybe his uncle got arrested. Maybe you never know. Let me show you what another version of this might look like. So this is called a zone of regulation. And you know, if you're on Facebook, you've probably seen teachers let the kids, when they come into the classroom, the kids kind of click, this is where I am. They tap it with their hands. Sometimes they, you know, they just seem kind of come in the classroom, I'm of this, I'm of this, I'm of this. And this gives teachers an opportunity. This is more elementary version, but this gives teachers an opportunity when students are joining the classroom to see, okay, do I have some students that may not be ready to learn? And it does kind of, I would say, lighten your heart a little bit to a student who may have a head on his desk, to, you know, a student who's being really wiggly, because you know what's going on. I will say I shared this with a group of teachers in North Alabama. And this one teacher, she emailed me. She said, I got this student. He's like throwing desks. And I don't know what to do with him. I'm not a parent myself. I've never had, you know, students like this. She was like, I don't think she's been teaching a year. And she started these zones of regulation like on a Monday. And then she emailed me Monday. She said, I got to tell you what happened. And she had a little friend that, you know, that perfect kid, the one you're like, why, I want 100 of him. You know, I always told her, you know, you're so nice and you're so pretty. What can I do? Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. All the things. And the day he came into class, he marked that he was terrified. And so she pulled him, you know, to the side before class started. And she's like, baby, what's going on? He's like, well, my grandmother, she had a heart attack this weekend and she's in the hospital. And she's like, oh my goodness, you know, we're going to remember her. And don't you worry about that. So at lunchtime, the grandmother called this teacher because she was worried about her grandson. And the teacher asked the grandmother, how are you doing? And the grandmother says, how did you know I was in the hospital? And she said, well, your son told me that your grandson told me you're in the hospital, and he's terrified. And she said, well, he is very upset, but he's terrified he's going to go back to his original home where he was terribly abused. And this teacher's like, I can't unknow this about this child. And the grandmother was so touched that the teacher had done something that morning just to kind of figure out where her children's hearts and minds were, and just what a difference that made. Here's another version. If you Google this, I mean, I know this is what a lot of teachers, if you just Google mood meters, Joe, you might want to put that in the chat in case they misunderstand. Mood is like, what is your mood? And so this is an example of what that looks like in a student when they're coming in the classroom, very similar to a zone of regulation, identifies this is how I'm feeling. And that definitely helps us as teachers kind of know what that looks like, and then know what to do. If you are a middle or high school teacher, this probably is not going to work for you, although the Nick Saban would work with my kids. But a lot of teachers are using Google Forms and other forms of technology as kids are coming in, even if it's just, hey, if you're having a bad day, this is just fill out this form so I know that you're struggling. And need to check in. And that means so much to students to say, oh my gosh, he cares. You know, he cares that I've had a bad day. Someone is listening to me. You know, the thing is, and I was in a lot of your breakout rooms the last couple of weeks, and I heard a lot about discipline concerns. I heard a lot about hitting. I heard a lot about cussing. And it reminded me so much of this image that, you know, everyone in the classroom has a story that leads to bad behaviors. But 9 times out of 10, the story behind that, it will make you angry. It will break your heart. So hurt kids try to hurt other kids, not necessarily physically, but through their words and by their actions. And so what we want to do tonight is talk about certainly using relationships, but what can we do to prevent that from happening in the, you know, to begin with. So if you've ever seen the movie Freedom Riders, I mean, that's an old movie now, but I'm an English teacher, so to me, it's always golden. But one of the students in the movie, his name was Manny Scott, or is Manny Scott. And he said something, I heard him speak not too long ago, and I told him I'm totally going to steal that. But he said something in a conversation, like what changed him from being this very foul-mouthed student, you know, that was so defiant, would not complete his assignments. And he said his teacher became a student of him. Like, she wanted to know me. She wanted to know my story. She wanted to hear it. She cared. And so being students of our students is a great place to start. I saw some of you last week, we're talking about you've done like some interest inventories. Those are awesome. And then when you're pulling your kids up, you pull out those interest inventories like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were interested in skateboarding, or I didn't know you were, you know, interested in dance or whatever. And the kids are like, what? You would be shocked by telling a student, I read what you wrote. That will much likely lessen the event for them to, one, be confrontational with you because they see you, or at least they begin to see you as an ally. Someone asked when I was, you know, doing a lot of work with OSI, which, you know, that's where Dr. Garner is, we were asked all the time, like, what's a good program? What can we do? And my response has really always been, be nice, be kind, and be thoughtful. Students know how to push our buttons. I mean, how many of you are parents? Do your kids know how to push your buttons? Yeah. Well, you know, our students are much the same. They've had a lot of practice at this. So as we really dig into this, we want to stress, just like Joe said, that we've got to know our kids, and we've got to let them know us. You'll see in these pictures that, you know, the teachers are standing at the door welcoming kids. You don't have to stop instruction, but you say, hey, Maya, how's your grandma doing? How'd you do in that baseball game last night? I like that shirt, got a new haircut. Just standing at the door, greeting them by name. We saw that in the video, the secondary teachers that Ms. Brown showed last week. Conferencing right here, you see this teacher on the bottom right, where this teacher is spending one-on-one time with the student to maybe retake a test, to maybe clarify, like, okay, you made a bad grade on this. What's going on? How can we support you? And that is something, as someone that taught, you know, big kids, conferencing is the game changer. Pulling a student aside for 1 minute and saying, baby, okay, because how many of you, let me look over here. Let me see where I can see. How many of you teach students between the ages, I don't know, of 11 and 18? Can I see kind of a thumbs up, or I see Lasagna, Kenneth? Okay, yeah, okay. So when you teach little people, you know, you're told when they misbehave to get down on their level, and you look at them and you're like, why did you do that? For those of you who teach 16-year-old boys, if I get right up in their face and say, why did you do that? Instantly, it's going to be what? It's confrontational. Like, you're in my space, right? And so with students, I learned as a very young teacher, and I'm also very petite, and my students were big old kids. I could pull my students to my desk, just like this teacher, and I'd be like, Jamal, yesterday was a train wreck. You disrupted my class. Come on now. You know, I can talk to him like that and be like, oh, Miss Shields, I won't do that again, because he feels me next to him, looking at him. It's just me and him. He doesn't have the 29 other kids looking. Oh, I'll be good, I promise. But if I do it in front of the class and say, Jamal, stop that, instantly barriers up, and I've given him exactly what he wanted. So my reminder to you is, when you feel you're about to lose it, one, just hold on, don't lose it, but take an opportunity to, when you have that moment, to pull that student aside and it's just you and him. The other thing I'm just going to say, for those of you who teach middle and high school, when you are talking with the student, do side by side. So let me see, I see Consuela, she's on the bottom left on my screen. So Consuela, she is acting a fool, like she is just giving me all kinds of trouble. She talking back. And so I'm like, hey, Consuela, come here, baby. You know, she's gonna come up. I'm not gonna look at her. I'm not gonna make eye contact with her. She's gonna be right here by my side, and I'm gonna kind of buddy up to her, like, hey, Consuela, what's going on? What's happening today? You seem a little off. Ah, totally different. Try that. And we'll talk about this next week. Talking with your middle high school students side by side is a game changer. With your younger students, you certainly want to get down on their level and have that eye contact, but there's this shift between elementary, middle, and high school where the students, they see a teacher getting in their face as a confrontational way of teaching. Some other things, how many of you remember last week, both Lane Dillard and Jennifer Brown discussed the importance of putting students in groups, giving them an opportunity to talk to one another. For those of you who have not put students in groups, it is terrifying to do that for the first few times, because you're like, I'm losing control because it's loud and I got all this stuff going on. I would challenge you, as you put your students in groups, go get you a $5 Dollar General stool. Go get you a little stool, one that's super light. And as your students are in groups, you're going to grab that stool and you're just going to walk from table to table and you're just going to sit. And you're going to listen, you're going to shake your head, love it. Great job. And you're going to pick up that stool and you're going to go to the next. You do that enough, your students will know that, okay, I am being watched. Miss Brown called it the magic clipboard last week. I love that. She says when she puts her students in groups, she carries around a clipboard. It doesn't have a thing on it. But the kids think she is just writing all kinds of notes. And she just walks around the room and the kids are like, oh, okay, well, there she is with her clipboard. And she's really just walking around the classroom to make sure they know I'm watching, but giving your students an opportunity to talk. And let me just say, noise is not a bad thing. Noise can be learning noise. It just needs to be controlled learning noise. So when Joe and I were talking about what are some things you can do to like mitigate, so the kids, don't have the opportunity or maybe the prompt or the trigger, as many of you just alluded to some of those, to do things that are one, going to stop instruction, frustrate you, and one, kids that are often in trouble, expect them to act unexpectedly. So that is just, you're going to go, that's not normal. Well, sometimes, yeah, that happens. Number two, employ thoughtful interactions. Every opportunity you have to have a conversation with the student, to say, good job, like that shirt, like, how was your football game? Just call them by name. You cannot ever underestimate how those small things can make the biggest difference. I think we've really hit hard on relationship building. The number 4 is what we've been doing in this session every week, is talking about classroom management and norms, promoting predictability and consistency. I don't care if you teach first grade or you teach 11th grade. If you walked into my 11th grade classroom and I see Carissa Lambert here, and I know her classroom is much the same, the kids knew what to expect. Now we may do some crazy things and walk outside and write poetry, but the expectation of behavior is still the same. How you submit your work, how you leave the classroom. Like, I wouldn't let my students leave the classroom until I said, you can go. The bell rings, I'm sorry. You're waiting on my cue to say you are dismissed, because I got good stuff to say. I want you to hear it, even if the bell rings. So we've been talking about norms so that your students know this is the way it's going to be. Teaching strategies to change the channel. Okay, things are getting kind of, how do you teach the kids to like, okay, change the channel with their line of thinking, with their behaviors, and doing everything we can do to reduce negative thinking. Sometimes, these kids hear this over and over and over again, either from home or maybe from other teachers or maybe from former teachers. Anything we can do to flip that switch for negative thinking and say, you are smart, you are kind, you are important. Trying not to say, okay, this student's going to sit over here every day for the next 3 years. You got to sit by me. We know why you want to do that. But do you see what happens if the same student is sitting by the teacher year after year after year? Does it surprise you when that student gets to middle school or high school and he or she is acting a certain way? So we want to build capacity. Joe, we had some great conversations. I want to make sure I had given the mic to you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Shields. I want you all to think about, have you ever purchased an item that is supposed to be one size fits all, or taken something to a dressing room that's supposed to be one size fits all, and then all of a sudden you try it on or put it on and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's a one size fits all, but it doesn't fit me. And that disappointment, frustration that you have when working with young men and young ladies, we can't approach it with a one size fits all, because they bring with them baggage from community, from home, from everything that they encounter outside of school. And regardless of what you've been told, parents do not keep the good ones at home and send us just the bad ones. They don't have the good ones hidden away. They send us the best they have. And it's our job to work within the opportunities that we are presented to change their lives, equip them with the tools and skills to be successful. And that includes behaviorally, emotionally, all of those areas that help them be more productive and can be successful later in life.
I was noticing, Joe, so last week they learned some new tools. I'm seeing in the chat that some of you have been using those random lists and that has worked really well. I love seeing that. I did see someone say, I don't feel like I accomplished anything in a group setting. It takes time. So the first few times you put students in groups, I don't care what grade, little kids or the big kids. It takes a minute to kind of figure out, okay, how do I waltz around this? But I would recommend to you to be very intentional. I'm an English teacher. So when I put my students in response groups, I used to say, all right, here are the groups. Now I need you to come up with some kind of like English teacher, English classroom name. So I had like they came up with their own motto. So I had the verb vipers and the creative cows. Oh my gosh, every time I called on them they moved, but that's another story altogether. But what I wanted them to see, like, this is my response, this is my group, these are my people. And I was listening to, I can't remember now if it was Jennifer or Lane, but when you are allowing your students to get into groups and they form friendships, it's amazing to watch them out in the hall when a student is being picked on and someone from their response group or their group in their classrooms like saying, hey, Sue Ellen, stop that. She's my friend. Like, they start taking up for their friends because they see them as part of their group. We wanted you to see some really cool tools for students that might be giving you a lot of frustrations. And this is kind of like a memorandum of understanding with students. And so this works with the younger students and certainly works with the older students. So I would not necessarily do this with all of my students, but I have this one student who's, constantly interrupting or maybe out of his seat or using language or whatever it might be. And so I'm going to pick on, let me see, Kenneth. I see Kenneth. So let's say Kenneth in his yellow shirt. He's been acting up a lot in my class. So I'm going to say, Kenneth, I'll keep him after class. I said, listen, so this is what we're going to do. Kenneth, tomorrow, when you start doing that, I'm going to come stand next to you. And that's your cue to stop. I don't want to stop teaching. I got 29 other students that are counting on me. So Kenneth, when I come stand next to you and you feel me, that means stop it. Or I'm going to give you the look. How many of you have perfected the teacher look? Have you found the look? Yes, I see Catherine. Okay, on the count of 3, hang on. Let me move where I can see you all. On the count of 3, let's see your teacher look. Oh, Sue Ellen, that is Kenneth. Lasagna, that is terrifying. Yes. Let me see. I'm going around here.
Your teacher look cannot be you laughing.
We all have
that.
it.
I saw that. Yep.
It's the look we give our children or sometimes our spouse. But I tell that student, but what's beautiful is we have agreed that when you do this thing, I'm going to give you that look, or I'm going to come. Just that proximity lets me continue teaching. He feels me, and Ken's like, okay, teacher's here, pull it together. And then once they do that, I'm like, great, awesome. But I tell you what, if you don't do that, then you're going to self-check. And we already have a list of things that you're going to have to do. What we're actually teaching the student is, one, how to de-escalate himself and how to regulate his own behavior. Now, I wish I could say, well, we don't have to do that. Well, you're a teacher. You are teaching kids that have not learned to self-regulate. And this is a life skill. I mean, I can just go on social media and see a lot of grown-ups that have not learned that skill. So this is a great opportunity for us to have with students. This is another example. This is called a reset form. I totally stole these from other schools. But when a student does something, and by the way, this is not just for elementary. I do the same thing with high school students. So let's go back to, Jennifer. She's a 9th grade girl who's, she is flirting and she is out of her seat and she just give me all kinds of fit. I would do something that looks exactly like this, but it would definitely have a 9th grade, look to it. This is a student who has misbehaved, and it's called a reset form. And I'm going to say, did you see my look? How were you feeling when you did that? Well, I was embarrassed. I was hurt. Do you see every one of those things you just said? Do you see that at the beginning? I felt this way, and that's why I acted that way. What rule did you break? What was your behavior? This one's called a think sheet. What did you want? I wanted attention. How did this make other people feel? Well, it made them confused. We want them to have accountability that what you did interrupted learning for other students. So these are just examples of, once the thing happens, how to hold them responsible. Now, this is something I stole from Dr. Greg Benner, who is he's just a really great presenter on classroom management and foundational wellness, which foundational wellness is just like your foundational wellness, your students' foundational wellness. But one of these things that he shared, and y'all, this is, if you do anything this week, try this with a student that maybe you're having some issues with. It's called 2 by 10. And so for 2 minutes, for 10 days, but I will say I've been doing this for a few years now, and most teachers will come back to us and say it took me 5 or it took me 4. It didn't take me all 10 days. But with a student that is really giving you some anxiety or stopping instruction, when that student comes to class, I keep picking on the same people, so let me find someone else. When that student comes to class, okay, Bethany. So Bethany, when Bethany comes to class, we'll say, hey, Bethany, baby, come here a minute. How are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Well, hey, yesterday when we were reading, Robert Frost, and, we were talking about the road not taken, and you said you would take the road, more traveled. I thought what you said was amazing. And I wish I had an opportunity for you to say that from the whole classroom. When we go over that today, will you say that? Because I want them to hear it. Awesome. Listen, now yesterday you were a little talkative and it was giving me a lot of stress. Can we not do that today? And then she goes back to her desk. 2 minutes. She comes back the next day. Hey, Bethany, come here, baby. Yesterday was good. Thank you. How are things going? How's your grandma? All right. Okay, go sit down. She comes in. Now third day, she's coming to me. Like she knows, like, this is what I'm basically saying to Bethany every day is, how are you? I believe in you. You are important and you are safe here. And that makes her want to stop. Once you've done this for a while, your kids would do anything for you if they know that you believe in them. They will even tell the other kids, stop it. I was sharing, in a previous session, I used to conference with my students every Friday, big old kids. And mostly because my kids came to me, they were not readers. They did not know who Langston Hughes and James Baldwin and Maya Angelou. They didn't know these amazing authors. And so on Fridays, I would pull them up to my desk, and sometimes I'd yell at them, because one-on-one. Sometimes I'd be like, okay, Leslie, that test, terrible. Let's retake that. And I will never forget, this was 32 years ago. I am working with this 18-year-old kid at my desk, probably yelling at him. His name is Roderick, letting him retake a test. I don't even remember what, but he was at my desk on Friday. I always did my conferences on Fridays while the rest of my students were listening to books on tape or doing response groups or something else. And this other kid comes up to my desk, and Roderick says to him, hey, man, this is my special time with Miss Shields. Like a first grade kid would. And you know what my students called conference time for the rest of the year because of Roderick? Special time. I even started calling it special time. I learned very quickly, these senior boys and girls, they really appreciated someone saying, I'm going to hold you accountable. So this checklist is something that's going to be part of your homework assignment. This is what is called an equitable practice checklist. And really, it's just those things that good teachers, I bet you're going to look at this and be like, I already do all of this, which is awesome. Good teachers do this naturally. But as you guys are coming into the profession, we wanted to give you this checklist, and you just print this off this week. And we want you to try to hit, these throughout the next week. We're not asking you to do a whole lot with it, just to print this off. Are you welcoming your students when they come in the room? Are you using eye contact? Are you walking around the classroom, that you're not just staying up at the front? Are you using proximity? Are you using body language? Are you arranging the classroom in a way that kids could talk? Now, there's no grade on this. It says 1 point and 2 points. Just ignore all that. This is for you. This is self-reflection for you. And we'd like you to actually just use this week. And each time you do something, just put a little check mark, and you'll actually upload this next week. So if you don't get to all of them, it's no big, but certainly if you do, that's awesome. We want you to use this as an opportunity to really start building your classroom, and you will see very quickly the effect that has on classroom management. Just be careful, because as you're working with students, particularly those that come to us with, a lot of baggage, as a teacher, you go home thinking about your kids. I mean, don't you already do that? You think about those kids that you put on the bus. You see them come to school when it's freezing outside and they're wearing t-shirts. You see that, these are your kids. They will always be your kids. When you see these kids 20 years from now, Walmart picking out their underwear, they are still your students, and be prepared because you will see them. So be very careful, because all teachers experience secondary trauma. We do, because we care so much about our kids. And so what we have to do is use things like what we're doing right now, community and working with others, to make sure that we remember why we did this and that we do not burn out. So some things for you to do as teachers is to know your triggers. We talked about kids' triggers, but know what your triggers are. Know when you are about to lose your cool, and if it is at all possible that you can tap out. That like you got a buddy next door that you're like, I'm about to say something's gonna get me on the news. I gotta step out a minute. Having a buddy, looking for boundaries for expectations. Don't expect so much of yourself. One of you wrote, I don't feel like I'm a real teacher because this other each one of you are real teachers. You are standing in front of kids every day. You are in the life-changing business like every other teacher at your school, but do not expect so much of yourself in these first few months and make yourself feel frustrated. It takes time for everybody. Learn to unplug. And if my husband, who's in the next room, if he hears me say this, he's going to be like, pot calling the kettle black. So I got to do this more too. But sometimes you have to say no to make way for the right yeses, because you have to say yeses for yourself, to give yourself some time. Use your parents. I will say this to you, one of the best partners that you can have in teaching kids is making their parents know, I'm on your side. We've already talked about this, I know, in previous sessions, but when you have, I love parent conferences. I know that makes me a complete weirdo, but I absolutely love, the madder the mom or the grandma was, the better, like bring it. And I always begin every conference with this one sentence, no matter how mad they were, how can I be a better teacher to your son? I'm just going to start there. And the parents are like, wait, what? That's not what I expected. I expected, and I'm mad. Now don't get me wrong. I'm mad too, or I've got issues. But I always start with, we're here today because I need to do a better job. You tell me what I need to do. And instantly you can just feel it. All of that just goes away. Use that. I'm telling you, it is a game changer when talking to your moms and your dads. Now, as we wrap up, and I'm going to share a video with you of a teacher doing everything we just talked about, teaching a really tough kid. And you're going to see that this teacher, one, did not burn out. She had more time to teach. She enjoyed her job. You know, and by doing these things, you're not going to be stressed. You're going to have better health. And the whole reason y'all, each of us are staying till late on Wednesday nights is because we believe in every one of you and we want you to stay in this profession. We are investing in you every Wednesday night because we know you would not be here if you didn't have the best interest of your kids. And so we want you to stay in this profession and have certainly greater student engagement. So this is our assignment. I'm gonna pull this up so I can start pulling it, so I can start get it queued up. So we're gonna watch this video. Let me pause it real quick. And what I'd like you to do, what I'd like you to do in the chat is every time you see this teacher do something we have talked about tonight, or maybe something Jennifer or Lane talked about last week, will you just put it in the chat? Because we want to capture that. So if you have that, that document pulled up, I can put that link in the chat too, but everything you see this teacher do to, one, stop the behavior before it happens, and then to create a place where this student feels as though, okay, I can't be bad.
My name is DJ Baptiste, and I was born in Lacombe, Louisiana. I was raised by my grandmother. I was born to a 14-year-old mom and a 16-year-old dad, so they were young. They really weren't able to make too many decisions. I was very defiant, though. I hated it. I loved to get in trouble because of getting in trouble got your attention. I was the type of student where I loved attention, and I did whatever it took to get attention. I was the leader of a gang, and let me tell you why, because in a gang, we got a sense of security and a sense of belonging. We feel like these my homies, they gonna take care of me, they got me, no matter what. So that give us that sense of belonging. Fight. That was our only option. We had a disagreement, we fought. Whether we playing basketball, playing hide and go seek, it didn't matter. If it's a disagreement, we fight. So I was raised like that, and that was instilled in my head. It wasn't no other option. You fight. You have to be violent. And I'm gonna tell you, we like to fight in school because we know we had a crowd, so we continue to get kicked out of school. We jump people. I mean, just so much violence. I never was a second thought. When it came to my head, that's what I did. If I wanted to fight, boom, I'm fighting. If you're close enough where I can put my hands on you, I'm hitting you in your mouth. That's just how I was. I did go to juvenile twice. Me and my homeboys was riding one time. We got pulled over by the police. The police found some pistols in the trunk, pistols up under the seat. And we wasn't even headed to out of all the times we done had guns on us, headed to go do something, the police never stopped us. But this time we were just riding around with the guns, and he stopped us. And they confiscated all the guns and took us down, took the guns, and yeah, pretty bad. It was my first day of my senior year of school, and everybody always tell me, since you hate school so much and you're ready to get out of school, then why don't you just go ahead and put forth a little effort and finish your senior year? And I didn't look at it like that. I looked at school as a place of, that's where I can associate. This one I can make people laugh. I can be a leader still because people want to see me. People want to follow me. I can look at girls. And if anything's going on between the hours of 8 and 3, it's going to happen in school. So I didn't want to miss it. So that was my little motivation for school, to go to school, because I didn't want to miss anything. And I walked in Miss P class, that's what I call it, Miss P class late.
My name is Donna Porter, and I teach public speaking at Picayune Memorial High School in Picayune, Mississippi.
I sat back and thought about it. When you late to something, everybody looks at you.
And all of a sudden the door flings open and this huge student that I've never seen in my life walks in and says,
"What's up?" And she looked, and I said, "What's up?" You know, and I just had the attention of the class that fast.
My first thought is, why did this happen to me? On the first day of school when I'm trying to set the tone. And then I thought, I've got this. Thank goodness I've got this. But to be able to access my brilliance, I have to take a deep breath, stay composed, and watch him look at his nonverbal language because all behavior is purposeful.
She said, well, I noticed you're late to my room. There's no problem because you probably couldn't find it. I just kind of looked at her with this crazy look like, yeah, whatever. And then she was like, well, have a seat. And I looked at her, I said, do you have any kids?
And I said, well, actually, your name is DJ, Mr. Baptiste. I have 2, and I just informed the class about it, but because you missed my room, you didn't hear. So are you married, he said. And I said, actually, I just told the class I've been married for 30 years.
I stepped back and said, 30 years? Folded my arms, looked up and down and said, don't you think it's time for a change? Now, at that point in time right there, I expected her to get red in the face, lose her composure, run to her desk, get a referral, write me up, and send me out. I was ready for that. That's what I expected. And now that I've learned the brain seeks patterns. So that was the pattern that my brain was seeking. You be disrespectful, you get sent out of class, but you get the attention that you want. She didn't do that. She looked at me, she smiled, and said,
do you go to the doctor when you're well? And he looked at me very funny. He said, no, you go when you're sick. I said, do you come to school when you know everything? He said, I guess not. I guess you come supposedly to learn. I said, well, you've got a lot to learn, and I can't wait to teach you. And then I left him with that feeling of angst. And then I said, you know what I noticed more importantly about you? You have charisma.
Charisma? You know, she was like, do you know what that means? I said, I'm cute. And everybody in the class laughed. And she was like, something like that. She was like, but you just know how to work a room, you know? And I said, I was just listening to her. She was like, she threw me off because she started talking good about me after I wanted her to be get into a power struggle with me. That's what I wanted.
And I said, so I've been thinking in the last few seconds, I give jobs to my students in high school. Do you know anything about jobs in school? He said, oh yeah. In kindergarten, I was the line leader. I said, we don't have a line leader in high school, but we have appropriate jobs. And I usually take a week or so to figure out what job would best fit what student. I do a multiple intelligence survey, and we tell a little bit about ourselves. But you know what, DJ? I don't need to do all that with you, because you're innately designed to be a greeter. He's like, a greeter? What's that? And I said, a greeter is someone that will stand at my door every morning.
As everybody come in, I get to shake everybody's hand, appropriately hug the girls. That threw my mind off. And then she said, on top of that, I get to come in front of her class and have my own session for 2 to 3 minutes. How does that sound? That's what she said. I said, it sounds too good to be true, so let me run it back to you. I said, so you mean to tell me I get to stand outside your classroom, shake everybody's hand who comes by, then on top of that, I get to come in front of the class to have my own session? She was like, yeah. I said, well, I want, you know what I'm saying, I want to try this. She was like, but it's one catch. And I remember I dropped my head like I knew it was something, you know.
All you have to do is be on time.
Because if you're my greeter, that means you have to be the first one here so everybody get a chance to see you and shake your hand before they walk in my classroom. And I just remember shaking my head like, all right, I try this, you know. I see what, it's something here I can't tell yet, but it was something there, and I just remember thinking, I try this. And she said, okay, pick up your backpack that you threw down and go have a seat. And that was the first day of my new life.
Day 2, I'm standing in the hall and I see this mass of people just parting, and the only figurative language I can think of is Moses parting the Red Sea. And here comes this huge guy, and I hear these words that are so important for anybody watching this video. Everybody move out of my way. I've got to get to Miss Porter's class on time because, listen, I have a job to do. I have a job to do. A disconnected child is a discouraged child. He needed to be encouraged, and every day he stood from day 2. He had been in the criminal justice center. He had been expelled from the alternative school. He had been in school isolation, out of school suspension. Nothing worked. All he needed was to be encouraged. And he became my greeter. We usually have jobs just every 9 weeks, but by unanimous vote of the class, he became the year-long greeter because they felt nobody could do the job as well as DJ.
I feel like the experiences that I went through in my life was meant to happen so I can come back and help kids, help teachers understand. I feel like I have a gift that I need to share, a testimony that I would like to share, and I know I can help kids along with teachers. Oftentimes teachers get into it with students, they have problems with students because they don't have the skills. And I feel like anytime I can help a teacher get the skills, she has a chance to save a life. And I often tell teachers, I want you to have the same success story that Ms. Porter had. I want you to have that student that you walk down the aisle with to that graduation. I want you to have that student that say he owes his life to you. And the only reason she has that is because she had the skills of conscious discipline. So anything that's dealing with conscious discipline, I'm all for it.
I could watch that video 1,000,000 times. I know. I see some of you clap. Yes. And how many of you have a DJ? You all do. I mean, there may be at different ages. I see Jocelyn, you know, every time I see DJ's, you know, story, I am so reminded of all the DJs I've had. And I'm going to go back to the help. This teacher told him, you are kind, you are smart, you are important. I'm going to give you a job. And just like you, and you, I mean, A+ on the chat. Like you were catching things like, yeah, she did take a deep breath. She actually did have a mindful second or two. Absolutely. You know, she did all of these things. And did you hear him say, and that was the beginning of the rest of my life. This one teacher who could have just gone off on the first day of school because he was trying to, it was a learned pattern. You know, he acts up and then he's asked to leave. I see some of you, if in some of your districts, they actually came to Alabama, I believe last year. And so I was going to share this with you. You will see Dr. Garner and myself and DJ Batiste and his teacher. They came and reenacted this, and it was so powerful. And none of that was hard. So as I leave you and really pass this to Joe, I wanted to share with you, this is just a personal story, but on the last day of school, every year that I've taught kids, and these are not pictures of my students because, you know, I'm one of those teachers, like I just didn't take pictures. Like I just lived in the moment. Like I just didn't. And I feel so bad about that now. So anyway, you just have to, you know, imagine. But at the end of every school year, I pull my students out because, you know, outside if it's pretty, and we would sit outside and I'd, you know, get a ball of yarn and I would, you know, sit around in a big circle with my 30-something kids from every class. And I'd start off like, what are you going to remember most about this year? You know, what do you get? I'd come up with all sorts of prompts. And, you know, it might be, what did you enjoy most this year? So I'm going to throw it to Jocelyn and she's going to say what she's did. And then she's going to throw it to Catherine. You know, at the end, you have this huge web, right? You've probably done this before. And I would have the students, you know, stand up and I would walk underneath them. I'd have them stand up holding the web and I'd have them put their hands over their head and I'd walk by with a pair of scissors. And I would say, as only English teachers can, you know, in all of time and space, I got to be your teacher this year through the good, the bad, the ugly, the tears, the laughter, and forever we are connected. So 20 years from now, you're going to see me with your family and I want you to stop everything, come running to me and introduce me. I will forever be your teacher and everyone in this classroom will forever be your classmates. And so I just went through and I just cut the little pieces of string and said, you know, just hold on to the string to know that someone believes in you. And, you know, I think I shared in a previous session, I've had students, you know, call me from jail 10 years later because they remembered I said, you've got someone that believes in you. And, you know, at the end of the day, all the kids would try to make bracelets. And I'm sure a lot of kids, you know, threw it away. But it amazes me. In my 33rd year of teaching, of education, when I go to the grocery store or I go somewhere and a 32-year-old man opens up his wallet when he sees me and pulls out this ratty little piece of string. I want you to hear me say that's why I became a teacher. It's those kind of moments. So I was doing a session the other day with about 500 teachers. It was a much longer session than this, but basically the same thing. And I had shared this story. And I want to share this with you. A teacher was in the room and messaged me this on Instagram. I want you to read that. The students who need us the most are the ones that hold on to that, to know that someone believes in them. And I'm just saying all this now because when your kids know you care, you can have all the instructional strategies in the world, but when they know that you care about them, they will do anything for you. And this cost me nothing. And, you know, not too long ago, I was at the Dollar General, and, you know, this man, like, I still have this string. I'm like, oh my gosh, why? That's amazing. So our homework tonight, I know it is, and I want you to know that's my one little story. Each of you are going to have hundreds of stories that are just like that. As you create these practices in your classroom, whatever those might be, and the kids are going to remember the smallest things that you say forever. It amazes me when they repeat something you said to them, you know, 15 years ago, and you're like, did I say that? So for our homework over the next week, we want you to print off that equitable practices list. I kept putting it in the chat, and just kind of check them off as you do them. And then next week, you'll actually upload it. You'll take a picture of it and upload it to the form. And just tell us, you know, how did it help? And yes, we'll put that right back in. So Catherine, if you missed it, we'll definitely put, it's also hyperlinked. So we'll give you the slides like we always do, and it will be in there. I am looking at our curriculum. We are almost halfway through. I'll put it right back in the chat, or maybe one of my colleagues will throw that link in the chat for you. Next week, William Jones, who may be in the room, I can't see everybody, and two others, I think Carrie and Shane Halls are going to be joining us to talk about where's our course of study. There, I see William. I know William has some big plans because next week is also about wearing your school colors, like your school colors, not your college colors. So we want you to wear your school t-shirts or your school colors. They're really going to whoop that up. And we're going to show you, okay, now we've kind of done all this stuff. Now we got to talk about content knowledge. Where do you find your course of study? We're going to talk a little bit about grading, because we'll be talking about that in a couple of weeks. But we want you to know where all the stuff is. And so we're going to give you everything that you're going to need to really dig into your classroom. Before I go to, well, I tell you what, I'm going to click on this just so you can see it. Before I put the link in for our assignment, Dr. Garner, I just want you to see, he answered every single question. And so we're going to do a few of these. Those of you who want to stay, he's going to answer any questions you have, as well as some of these highlighted questions that he seemed to get a lot, that you have some questions about being an emergency certificate teacher. Oops, wrong one. Our question next week is about, like